Home Theory 77. Man, do we have a series to talk about, and we're going to talk about it with Eric Nehm of The Athletic from Milwaukee. Beautiful Milwaukee this time of year. We'll be heading out there tomorrow. Caught a couple Bucks practices before we got going here, but this series, Eric, it's starting to remind me of Bucks Nets a year ago, and I think that holds the crown as one of the best series ever, at least that I've watched in my lifetime. Probably one of the more consequential series in NBA history, considering where it sent the Bucks and where it sent the Nets at this point. But this one feels similar to me at this point. You got this championship repeat contender in the Bucks. You have this rising team in the Celtics that are trying to uh, gain that status in the East, surprise some people, come out of the East, which I still think would surprise a lot of people. And I don't know. I have the sense that this series, the winner of this series, could be the team that goes on to win the NBA championship.
Yeah, I think coming into this series, it definitely felt like the Eastern Conference Finals to me, that this was gonna be the 2 teams that, anyone was gonna be picking once they got to the Eastern Conference Finals, like, that's what everyone's gonna do with the winner here, and, I think this is pretty much I'm not gonna say it's played out exactly how we all thought it was. I probably would have reversed these 2 outcomes, because the Bucks tend to lose game 1s. That's just kind of their thing under Mike Budenholzer. So I figured, they were going to lose game 1, and then the Bucks would have came back and won game 2. But we flipped them. But either way, we go back to Milwaukee. They'll be here tomorrow in 5-star form, and I think we're about to be in for a really tough series. I think these 2 teams match up really well, and I think it only gets more interesting from here.
Yeah, it's a contrast to styles for sure, an interesting one. Celtics have spread the ball out really well, gotten everyone going. Grant Williams, ginormous in game 2. Pritchard having moments. Horford hitting big shots, and really the ball has been taken away from Jason Tatum, much like in the first round, in ways that have made his teammates try to beat the Bucks. On the Bucks side, it feels like it's all about Giannis and what he's going to be able to do one-on-one against the Celtics defense. And I know you were asking about that in a lot of the press conferences, Boston's ability to make him play one-on-one. And it's just startling what Al Horford at 35 and Grant Williams in isolation have been able to do against them. Game 1, he's held down, but he kills the Celtics with his passing, which was just an astounding performance on that side of his game. But game 2, they stay home on the shooters. They hold the Bucks to 16% from 3, and they hold Giannis down in isolation, which, I mean, you've watched every game of Giannis's last couple of years here. Have you ever really seen a defense hold him down like they did in game 2?
I mean, the standards that have kind of always been set for Giannis, or at least the way that Giannis describes it, is the Raptors in the 2018-19 series, where the Bucks dropped 4 in a row in the Eastern Conference Finals after taking a 2-0 lead, and then the Heat in the bubble. If you listen to Giannis talk about the teams that really hold him down, or have defended him well in the past, it is those 2 teams. Those are the ones that he kind of thinks of. That's kind of his like gold standard for how all of this works and how defending him works. And the performance in game 2 looked very similar to a number of those nights. It looked like he got sped up offensively. It looked like, he encountered a tough on ball defender, and then on the backside there was someone else to clean it up. There was also wings reaching in and stuff like that. And I'm honestly just really curious to see what he does the rest of the series, because there have been series where he's struggled early on and then figured some things out and figured out how to be successful. So I'm fascinated to see if the Bucks can actually manage to do that and find ways to get him loose, because I do think it's quite a bit harder without Chris Middleton. With Chris Middleton on a night that Giannis isn't going, one, Chris Middleton can score, but then two, Chris Middleton in the pick and roll can find Giannis. They've been working together now for 8 years. They know each other's games inside out. They know how to, work off of each other. And without Middleton, the Celtics are going to essentially tell Grayson Allen and Pat Connaughton and Wesley Matthews, beat them. Like, go for it. If you guys want to, go take all those layups. Go take dunks. Do whatever you want, because we don't care. Like, we're just not going to let Giannis touch the ball. And I think that's where all this gets really interesting is, if he can figure out ways to do this in isolation. If you watch the Nets series that you referenced last year, the biggest shot Giannis hits is a hook shot over Kevin Durant. Okay. Can he get to his spots and actually rise up for that? He obviously likes the fadeaway on the baseline. Can he get to that shot? It's a shot that they've taken away thus far. But can he find ways to do this one on one? It's something that he hasn't been able to do thus far this series. We've seen him struggle before in these situations, but also we've seen the Bucks, as he is struggling, find ways to open him up. So we'll see kind of what happens as the series progress.
Yeah, it feels like and everything's on a string, the way these 2 teams are playing, because Boston's offense was horrendous in game 1, and that opened up the opportunities for him to get on the open floor. Obviously, the Bucks are maybe the best, transition team in the NBA, and their execution on offense kinda took that away in game 2. Just the passing, especially in that second quarter, was picturesque. I mean, that's what I love most about basketball is when a team gets passing at that level, and that's effectively, along with 47% three-point shooting, what did the Bucks in game 2 there. I'm just waiting in the half court, and I think Giannis has grown in the half court for him to beat that one-on-one defense that's in front of him. And I'm shocked. I think it started to open up a little bit in that third quarter, but just how well one-on-one defense is held against him. Like you don't even think that's possible that whether it's Horford or Grant or whoever else is out there. I think the other Celtics have struggled outside of those two, but for one-on-one defense to hold him down like it has, that's got to just kind of go back to him, I think. Like at some point he's going to find I don't know, the will, the spots, the positions on the floor to beat that, or even the jump shots like you talked about. I don't know about the fade away for him. I know it's in his arsenal, but I think the Celtics are okay with him shooting that. Maybe it's a mid-range pull-up that gets him going. He hit a handful of those in game 1. And he certainly got to the free throw line a bunch in that second half. That's another area he can do it from. But in terms of trying to just charge into the lane, these Celtics defenders, they're so strong. Like there was one play where he smashed into Grant at full speed and Grant didn't even move. I was
Right.
like, oh man, this is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, those 2 have been really tough thus far. It's to me interesting to see how Giannis has tried to attack thus far. I think a lot of it was, you know, game 1, he's going to sit there, he's going to survey the floor, sees early help from the Celtics and makes the right pass. Game 2 they decided not to do that. And as soon as he saw that it was okay, well, I've gotten the ball in my hands. I've surveyed the floor. The pass isn't there, so now I should attack. And I just thought over and over again we saw him, essentially first dribbles with his right hand. He's going to try to go very hard. He's going to try to go as quickly as he could with that right hand. And I just honestly thought he got predictable. That
Yeah.
once they saw him survey the floor, they were able to, puff their chest out and say, all right, like you're going to try to go to your right and you're going to try to make a quick move that direction. All right, we know what's coming. Like we can handle this bump. And I'm really interested to see if in game 3 we see more variety from him. If we see quick moves to his left or right, if we see him, actually go left, if we see him spin baseline, if we see the Bucks put him in different spots than what we saw in game 1 and game 2. Because I thought in game 1 the Bucks opened and put him in the same spots that they put him in game 1. The Celtics didn't help in the same way that they did in game 1. And then they had Giannis and then Jrue Holiday as well try to beat the Celtics in isolation. In the second half, I thought we saw the Bucks say, okay, well, if this is how you're going to play and you're not going to help, then we're going to screen with Grayson Allen every time down the floor and you're going to switch on one of your wings and Giannis is going to get whatever he wants against that person.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. And obviously, we saw a whole second half of that, which means Ime Udoka saw the exact same things, which means game 3, you're probably not going to see the same coverages that you saw in game 2. And I think that's going to be kind of the cat and mouse game that these 2 teams play for the rest of the series is okay, game 1, Bucks came out, did their thing. Game 2, the Celtics came out, knew what the Bucks were going to do, made the adjustments, and then now it's, if this is how the series is going to go, the ball should be back in the Bucks court that all right, how are you going to adjust to their adjustments, and how are you going to get yourself open, and how are you going to create offense, and kind of do all those things. So this feels very much like kind of like the back and forth that you're gonna have in any series. But I think ultimately you have to see what Giannis can do in those one-on-one spots. I remember, I guess, let's see, it had been 18-19 season, so 3 years ago. Uh, Giannis at the end of that season, we had a long conversation at the Athletic kind of about the playoff journey and different things. And like the quote that he said was like, by the end of that Celtics series, my back was hurting. But I knew that if my back was hurting, Al Horford's back was damn sure hurting, and it was probably hurting even worse. And we've seen this kind of in the past is that, for the first couple games of a series, hey, I'll put my chest on Giannis. Yep, I can do this. And then all of a sudden it gets to game 5 and game
Especially for
6,
an older guy.
and you're a little bit older. And even if you're a younger guy like Grant Williams, like there's a difference between doing that to Giannis once or twice, and then there's a difference between doing it to him a lot. And for game 3, I think they're gonna be fine, right? They just had 3 days off in between this. So I think really where we're gonna start to see, and I do think this is gonna end up being a long series, is like, okay, what is game 6, game 7? What do those look like? As you try to figure all those things out.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Middleton factor. I think a lot of Celtics fans made a big deal about that on that side, and I said coming into the series, like just the Giannis factor alone. I know Middleton's a big loss for them, but that guy the motor's not going to stop with him until it hits 0-0 in that final elimination game, and he's going to keep going downhill. He's going to keep attacking the basket, as you said. He's going to keep laying into Horford and Grant or whoever else is in him until the series is over, and it very well could be 7 games here. So there is a physicality holdup factor that is enormous. We already saw Marcus Smart get damaged in game 1 pretty badly. Who knows how he's going to look for the rest of this year? But on that Middleton point, what do they lose most in him? I think the clutch sets are what people make a big deal out of, but I feel like Holiday and Giannis's numbers, at least in crunch time, have been fairly even with Middleton's this year. And I think they've adapted past the point where they need Middleton to take all the shots in those situations. But he's also another perimeter defender on this defense. And I find the Bucks defense so interesting. Obviously they drop, obviously they give up the threes. Um, but they're also contesting so hard. In game 2, it felt like any up fake was gonna send them into the rafters. They had stretches this season where they were, like, bottom 10, bottom 5, bottom 10 in defense, and again, in game 1, they were awesome. Game 2, they were pretty erratic, giving up 65 in that first half, so they've been all over the place defensively. I feel like that might be the underrated spot where they might miss Middleton most as much as he gives them on offense.
Man, it's tough. So on defense, it hurts a lot without Chris because the Bucks in crunch time for, I mean, pretty much as long as Bud has been around is, the crunch time fourth quarters, they'll start using a small ball lineup. They'll start to switch, and Chris Middleton is 6'7", and he can handle guards. He can handle wings. If necessary, he can hold up against a big for a little while. Like he can do all those things. Now if the Bucks wanna go small, they can't do it, right? Because you're gonna have either you try to do the 3 bigs with Bobby Portis and you have someone out there that's not quick enough. You try to go small, it's Grayson Allen, it's Pat Connaughton, they're not big enough to cover, Jason Tatum or whoever it may be, and that hurts. I think just overall, it makes their matchups a lot tougher. It makes it a lot more likely that there's someone out there that isn't gonna be able to compete defensively. But to me, offensively, um 17 players in the league this year had 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists per game. Chris Middleton was one of them. 20 points, 5
All-star.
rebounds, 5 assists. Like he
Mhm.
was an all-star this year. Like this isn't just like, oh yeah, when the Bucks are in trouble, they give it to Chris Middleton and he scores 15 points. Like no, he's a legit like producer of shots. And I think the one stat that I've been quoting literally since the moment Chris Middleton went out is 44% of Chris Middleton's makes this year were assisted. So that means over half of his shots he created for himself without an assist, without a dribble handoff, without anything like that. Like that is
The counter
literally
to Giannis, 'cause Giannis can do it a little bit, but not much.
correct.
Yeah.
So you give Chris the ball and he can make something happen. And obviously you add the assist in there. And like I said, in the pick and roll game, in the dribble handoff game, you hand the ball off to Chris. teams actually have to cover him. They're not just going to let Giannis hand it off or let Giannis set a screen for him and let him shoot wide open shots. That's not what they'll allow him to do because he's too good for that. He can go off, he can score 40. He did it twice in the Eastern Conference Finals and in the finals. Like, he can do that. You can't let him go off. So you have to pay attention to him. And then when you have to pay attention to him, that's lobs for Giannis. That's easy pocket passes for Giannis. It's just easy buckets for him. To me, defensively, the Bucks have found a way thus far. Obviously, game two notwithstanding, that wasn't their best defensive performance, 65 points in the first half, but they found a way defensively without Middleton. Offensively, they've stunk. They have the worst offense in the playoffs right now, and it isn't really close. I think I put it in my story after game two. Of the 20 teams to participate in the play-in or playoffs, so the 20 teams that have participated in the postseason, the Bucks have the second worst offense, and the only team worse than them is the team that they beat in the first round, the Bulls.
Mhm.
They just are struggling to score in the half court, and as much as Giannis can make plays and create and attract double teams and do all these things in that game one, they only scratched off they can only scratch across enough points to barely win that game. It wasn't a dominant win despite them having a great defensive night. And now you go to game two, and the Celtics scored 109. They probably score closer to 115 or 120 if everyone plays the whole time and you actually have to play that thing out. But the Bucks scored 86 points. 86 points is just not going to be enough. So, going into the series, I thought the defense might be a real struggle without Middleton. The Bucks have found a way to survive. Offensively is really where they're hurting right now without Chris.
Yeah, that's where it's gonna have to come around. And Jrue Holiday, I find his role in it interesting. I will get to his defense in a minute in the great piece you wrote earlier this year about him. By the way, Eric Nehm, go check out his work at The Athletic. He's the best covering the Bucks out there. But offensively for Holiday, you talk about like the pick and roll possibilities with Middleton and Giannis. Jrue, it's weird because he can get wherever he wants on the floor, it looks like, for himself and get a shot off. The creation that they need, a lot of it's come from Giannis so far. You don't see a lot of it from Jrue so far in this series, in my mind, and that might be where he needs to step up a little bit. Obviously, he's given them an enormous amount of production defensively, guarding Tatum, especially in game one to a degree. I wasn't sure it was possible, but went back and looked at the numbers, and I was like, oh, geez, like he can guard Tatum. And he's getting his shot off in spots, giving them the baskets to keep pace when they're down, pacing their lead when they're ahead, and hitting big threes in that game one that gave them that double-digit lead. But the creation, I feel like, is the one thing that would turn the Bucks' offense around. It feels like, as you talked about with what they're missing in Middleton, someone needs to fill that gap in terms of creating off the dribble or creating for others.
I think the tough part is teams just don't care enough.
Yeah.
Like they don't care if you put Jrue Holiday in a pick and roll. They're gonna say, "Okay, shoot, that's fine." And especially in this series where I think it's been made clear that the Bucks could really use a way to get Giannis easy shots. And obviously, the Celtics took care of transition in game two by making all of their shots. Simple way to get rid of transition points. Just make all of your shots, in
Mhm.
case you're curious. So they did that in game two. And if Giannis doesn't get out in transition in the half court, the only way he's going to get easy shots is if you pay attention to someone else in the pick and roll or the dribble handoff or whatever it may be. And I'm just not convinced in any way that the Celtics are going to do that. Like, why would they go out of their way to, you know, deny Grayson Allen the rim or, do anything other than run him off the 3-point line? And same thing with Pat Connaughton or whoever it may be. Like, what? Okay, Grayson Allen and Pat Connaughton, you guys want to get to the rim. Jrue Holiday, you want to shoot all of the pickup, pull up threes. Okay, that's fine. Totally fine because Giannis isn't getting easy ones, and I think that's kind of the problem that the Bucks are in is they got to find ways to make the Celtics care about their other people and actually pay attention. And Holiday, for as good as he's been this year, and he really has been fantastic in different parts of the season, I think that's a spot where if you give the Celtics or any other team the option between Jrue Holiday and Giannis Antetokounmpo, they're going to pick Jrue Holiday 10 times out of 10 and say, Jrue, go score 40. We don't care. Like, one, we're not sure you can do it, but if you can, great, because Giannis still hasn't gotten going. And I think that's going to be the tough part.
Yeah, they got to get on transition. That's the story of the series. I think if they're able to do it, they'll probably win it. The Celtics execute offensively and keep them out of transition. That's probably going to be what swings in their factor. They also got the home court in Game 7 for whatever that's worth. I do kind of want to get in your experience covering the Bucks for our last half here. Of course, they're coming off a championship here, and I'm sure you have a million stories from a championship run coming out of that. But I want to get a feel for just how they've changed Milwaukee. I went there a couple weeks ago. There's obviously huge development around the stadium, new stadium, fan base is energized. You see the thousands and thousands of people standing outside during the finals there. I just want to get a feel of how this team and their success over the last 2-3 years here have changed the city.
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably starts with 2015. You have new ownership come in. Herb Cole, who will obviously, it's called Herb Cole Way, the street right by Fiserv Forum, and it's called that for a reason because in the '80s the Bucks were going to move. They weren't 100% sure if they're going to be able to find a new owner or a new arena, and he built the Bradley Center at that point. So essentially, Herb Cole kept the team in town, and then it was the 2010s. They were starting to figure out, does he want to keep the team anymore? He was getting a little bit older in age. And essentially, there was a time where he was going to sell the team to Michael Jordan. That at the same time when Jordan ended up buying the Bobcats, which ends up being the Hornets. Around that same time, the Bucks were going to sell to Jordan, but Jordan wouldn't commit to keeping the team in Milwaukee. And Herb Cole said, nope, I got to find someone that's willing to do it. Mark Lazary and Wes Eden stepped in and bought the Bucks in 2015, committed to keeping them. They went out and, built an arena. And now that arena is, as you mentioned, having tens of thousands of people outside of it, it's been too cold for that, to be totally honest, here in the first and second round. But last year in the finals, it was insanity. Like, just how many people were all the way around the arena, and just kind of it's been really quite a scene to see the city embrace the team like they have, embrace basketball like they have, embrace the NBA like they have. And obviously a huge part of it is Giannis kind of coming of age at the same time as the arena was getting built, new ownership was coming in. Like, the fact that the Bucks were able to marry those two things together, Giannis in a new arena, and then on top of that, Mike Budenholzer in that same time frame. Like, Bud has never coached a game in a different arena than Fiserv Forum. Like, the Bud era starts at the exact same time as the new arena's era. And oh, by the way, that's just as Giannis was having his first MVP season. Like, all Milwaukee has known since the new arena has been around has been winning basketball. And Bud is off to an insane pace as a coach. The winningest coach the Bucks have ever seen, and they've had some good ones over the years. And it's just kind of crazy to think that all of this has gone right and so quickly and for so many years now. Like, this is year 4 of the Bucks being very, very, very good, and it's kind of a new scene, especially in the 31 years that I've been alive. Like, the only season before that was good was the 2001 season, when they went to the Eastern Conference Finals with the big three of Ray Allen, Glenn Robinson, and Sam Cassell. Like, they just haven't been good, and now it's just unparalleled success for 4 seasons in a row.
Yeah, and they have a real personality, a real energy that you would think a championship team would have, between Bobby Portis and Brooke Lopez coming in and solidifying things. Like, they just have a great cast of characters, not only from an on-court standpoint. The way the team meshes and just the style they have is very distinct, especially how it fits around Giannis, but off the court too. And Giannis, I feel like he's got to be like one of the 2 to 5 most intriguing characters in NBA history. Just when you think of the background, the story, how he got where he was coming in the league, where he did. The book Marin Fader wrote last year, like, just recounting all of that, was just amazing because it happened so quietly. And it felt like just out of nowhere one day he was at MVP, menace, taking over the league, becoming the face of the league in a lot of different ways. So you've been around him. I know you got to talk to him after the parade last year, the championship. You were around that whole run there, and just him cementing his place in NBA history through last spring. That run intrigued me in a way I don't think any other run has outside of Boston. Like, I was just captivated by every step of the way. Him going down the East Finals, coming back from what looked like an injury that could have like knocked him out for a year. It was like, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. And then he's back having one of the most iconic finals performances ever and one of the most iconic plays in the finals ever with the block there. I mean, there's just a million different things you can say about him. Where does your mind go just in terms of covering him these last couple of years if you had to tell a Giannis story or just kind of encapsulate what he's become?
I mean, there's, like you said, a million of them, but, him going down and being hurt in that game, in Atlanta, you just kind of, like you said, thought, "Okay, not only is there goes the Bucks season, there goes next season."
Yeah.
Like with the way that his knee bent back, it just seemed impossible that he'd be anything other than out for the rest of the season and probably all of the next season. And it's just this thing where this dude in many ways feels superhuman. In the past, I've kind of joked with people. One of my favorite stories about him is there was a game, I guess that would have been in 16, 17, 17, 18, somewhere in there, where both him and Matthew Dellavedova sprained their ankles in the same game. And I'm telling you, injuries were identical. The way it happened, they both stepped on a foot, same foot, all of it looked the exact same. And Giannis went back into that game and played, and Delly was out for 3 weeks. And it was just like, wait, they both did the same thing. How is one dude back in the game and the other dude is out for 3 weeks? And it just gets to this point where it's like, what is this dude made of? Like, how is it possible that he just seemingly can't get hurt, that nothing can affect him, that he can get through? And there's just this belief with him where he's always going to find a way. And that to me just kind of felt like all of it.
There
Like,
was a game, I think it was against the Heat earlier this season that just encapsulated the way he plays. I'm trying to remember all the details off the top of my head, but I think the Heat were like in full control. There was an inbounds or something, and he just dove to the floor, got the jump ball. They got a game winner off of it. And like them getting back possession to have a chance to win was so improbable, but he just kept playing, and he got the jump ball, and they won the game. I think Middleton hit a shot or something, and that just encapsulated who he is. Like, he's just never gonna stop. The motor does not shut off until the series is over, the game's over, the possession's over. It's just nonstop.
and honestly, I think that's a huge part of the Bucks culture as well, is that they've just integrated everything that he's done in just kind of who he is. Like the fact that he doesn't give up means everybody else, like if that is your tone setter, okay, I can't miss a workout. I can't half-ass a workout. I can't not hustle for a play. I can't miss this box. Whatever it is, I can't do it because that guy that's won 2 MVPs, that's won a finals MVP, that's done all of these things is still going harder than me. Like that's the standard. And I think everything has just kind of become easy from that point in that, Mike Budenholzer's always said that this is a guy that's very coachable, that, if I need to get after Giannis for not trying hard enough or whatever it may be, like I can do that. I can let him know that he's doing that. And again, these are kind of like the stories you used to hear about Tim Duncan, right? Where Greg Popovich would just lay into Tim Duncan, and Tim Duncan took it because he was like, this is what the team needs to see. Like, you need to be able to coach the team. And that means you got to be able to coach me because I'm the standard setter. And honestly, I guess that parallel ends up becoming so easy to draw just because Giannis is much more exciting than Tim Duncan, both as a person and just as a player. But that's what the fact that you have a guy from the pop tree in Bud, and then you have Giannis, it just feels like that Tim Duncan, Greg Popovich connection where this dude sets the standard. This dude tries hard every single night. this dude works hard. All of that just feels like this is how you build a great franchise, and that's exactly what the Bucks have done since Mike Budenholzer has been here.
Yeah, and you think of the improvement too, the will to improve and carve out these other areas that most guys would just look at as weaknesses in their games and things that the free throws first and foremost. It's unreal what he's done at the free throw line after looking like he just couldn't make them period a year ago in that Brooklyn series, the countdown. And it was like, oh geez, this is gonna be like the next big Giannis failure in the playoffs. They lost that series to Toronto, the bubble meltdown, and now it's gonna be Giannis getting clowned at the free throw line and missing all of them in Brooklyn. But even just within that game 7, he turned it around toward the end of the game. Then the end of the NBA Finals, he has that game where he hit almost all of them to close it out, the 50-pointer. And now this year, I think it's up to 72% in the regular season. This series, it's down a little bit again, but you don't feel bad when he's at the free throw line anymore. He's got that release down. Nobody can really even count anymore, and he just shut all that down within the course of the year there. And I know you were really into the passing after game 1 and just how connected he is with everyone out there. That's grown quite a bit. So as good as he was last year and as dominant of a run as he had, feels like he's even better this year. I want to ask what it's like to be around him too, just from your perspective. Just, covering him, talking to him, interacting with him. I know he doesn't like the press conference setting. That's, like, not his thing, but he likes the media, and he likes interacting with guys one-on-one, and he likes talking and that kinda stuff, and you've obviously had some of those interactions with him.
Yeah, I mean, he's fascinating because, for the entirety of his career, it's always been a struggle to get him to come up on the podium, to step in front of the microphone. It's always, "Oh, man, is he actually gonna, come out and do it?" But for the most part, once he gets in front of the camera, once he starts answering questions, I think one of the things that's made him so impressive over the years is he's just incredibly authentic. That as soon as you put him in front of a microphone, you ask him a question, the only thing that can come out of his mouth is what he truly feels, and that to me has kind of always been the most impressive thing about him is he's just himself. Uh, the dad jokes are not funny; they stink. But like he loves telling them, and the thing that makes it funny is like he laughs harder than anyone else in the room. Like he's all the way. He's committed. He is committed to selling those jokes that are terrible. And like that is just to me like his personality is that dude is just incredibly authentic. He says what he thinks. If I think one thing that he's always appreciated about me and him and I have been together. This is I think year 8. I started covering the team in his second season. Um Year 8 together, he knows that I'm gonna ask him, you tossed that one out of bounds. Like, what were you thinking? Or why'd you do it? Or what like whatever. Like he's gonna hear about it. And I just think he always kind of answers that question. Like the one thing he won't answer and he will always deny when he's struggling at the rim to finish. No one has ever made him do that. He doesn't ever feel like anyone's playing good defense on him at the rim. He's just missing them. It's always going to be the same. They're showing bodies, they're being physical. He'll say those same things, but outside of that, for the most part, I just find him incredibly authentic, incredibly genuine, and I think that's probably what makes him such a compelling character to so many people following him from the outside.
One of my favorite things too to look at when you're talking about a championship team is just how it comes together, and there's always really fascinating stories about how it comes together. You just need all this different stuff to hit right. With Giannis, it obviously came down to drafting him, developing him. The Jabari Parker thing going sideways, I think, opened the door for him to really become the centerpiece of the team there. But even just within the last couple of years here, you think of what John Horst has done. Brook Lopez coming in on a biannual exception. Pat Connaughton, who was pretty good in Portland, just kind of landing in their lap there. You wrote about Wes Matthews arriving, becoming a really good player, great in game 1 for them. Grayson Allen, really just coming there for nothing. Bobby Portis, again, showed signs in Chicago, but he comes there essentially for nothing. And they had Serge Ibaka as kind of a depth piece this year. They've just made all the right moves over the last couple of years, it feels like, and that's sort of how a championship team comes together is you just hit all these right buttons and it all clicks and all these different little pieces work together. And Brooks like the most fascinating one of all, right? Because he changed his game, became an elite defender. You wrote about that at The Athletic. And really just became a floor spacer after becoming like this great post up guy in Brooklyn for all those different years.
Yeah, I mean, Brook is it's kind of crazy to think about, just how foundational he is to this team. Like you said, he came in on the biannual. That was one of the last moves that they made in that offseason before Bud's first season. And, you know, I I think everyone saw it and was like, "Okay, yeah, it's a solid signing." Obviously Brook has struggled a little bit with the Lakers, but, at the biennial exception, that can't be a bad move. Like, I'm sure he can give you some production, some minutes off the bench, and then all of a sudden, there's just an elite rim protector. Like, I've written about his drop coverage before. I think it's the best in the league. I think it's better than Rudy Gobert. Like,
He was a menace in game one.
he's the master of it. He knows exactly how to play the in between, take away the pass, take away the floater, anything at the rim. You're not getting past him. He's a mountain of a human. He's 7 feet tall, 280 pounds. In that game one, he had a closeout to Tatum all the way in the corner, and then Tatum drove him off of it, and he still affected Tatum's shot at the rim. Like, all of that is just kind of insane to think. Like, it's insane to think that that is what Brook Lopez is now. After when the Bucks signed him, he was a defensive liability that a lot of people thought was washed up. And now he's one of the most impactful defensive players in the league, and someone that's been essential to what Giannis does. You know, that's your center, spacing the floor, protecting the rim. He can kind of do it all. That one is, I think, always going to kind of go down as, that's like John Horst and Mike Budenholzer's, that's their crown jewel, that they took this dude from a biannual exception to the year after that biannual exception. He was, to me, the most pivotal guy that they needed to sign. They needed to figure out, okay, who do we want to bring back between, I think Chris Middleton was a free agent, Brook Lopez was a free agent, George Hill was a free agent, Nikola Mirotic was a free agent, Malcolm Brogdon was a free agent, and they decided correctly that Brook Lopez was the guy. Like, they
Mm.
could have said, okay, he had a 1 year for us. Let's find somebody else to fill that same role. We did it once, right? We could do it again. Let's keep Malcolm Brogdon. He's younger, he's got more potential. And they didn't do that. They said, all right,
That was
Brogdon.
controversial, yeah, at the
It,
time.
it was incredibly controversial, and they ended up making the right decision. Brook Lopez was that guy. And, it's just kind of decision after decision has kind of piled up and gone that way. And you look at last year, and PJ Tucker was their trade deadline acquisition. And, like, I was reporting on John Horst's interest in him 2 months before it happened. Like, that was their guy. They wanted PJ Tucker badly. And just like that, they brought in PJ Tucker, and he was the perfect fit for them.
Yeah, and that was a tough loss. We will kinda go back and forth on that one, probably depending on what this season ends up finishing as for the Bucks
Yeah.
there, but that is something they've missed all year is the extra wing there defensively, especially now with Middleton down. Yeah, that's a tough
It's a
one,
tough
and
one.
Semi Ojeleye
Didn't work
wasn't
out.
quite the
No,
PJ Tucker, and I
no,
think a lot of
no.
Celtics fans knew that wasn't gonna work, but we love Semi. Wish he was, in the series on some point, but, the Jrue Holiday thing, we talk about Brogdon, goes to Bledsoe. Bledsoe doesn't really work, and then with that Giannis thing coming up, the next offseason, they had to make that big move, it felt like, to show, "Alright, we're committed, we're gonna put a championship team around him, and we're gonna try to keep him here," and Holiday ended up becoming that guy. They gave up a ton to get him, all those future first-round picks, they essentially went all in on him, and I think most people around the league liked Holiday, but it was like, is this going to solidify a championship team? And it did, just because he's that level of a defender that can cement a championship defense. And you wrote about it, just all the little different things that go into it. He's defended Tatum in this series, which I still can't believe is on the table, but he makes it happen. And you really have the two best defensive guards in the league probably going at it in this series between Smart and Holiday. All our viewers trying to know what makes Smart on that end, but what makes Holiday the defender he is and kind of the piece that put all this together in the end.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about Jrue Holiday, and like you said, I spent an entire season asking people about Jrue Holiday, about, like, kind of what he can do and what makes him one of the best defenders in the league. Like, I think it starts with his physical skills. I think if you look at his legs, they are just tree trunks. You can't move that dude. It doesn't matter who's trying to post him up. It's just not. I mean, it could work, but it's going to take you a long time to get to your spot. You're not going to be able to do it easily. And in the meantime, he's probably going to try to strip you, and he'll probably be successful because he's that good. So you start there, then you add on top of it insane instincts. Then you add on it the fact that he grew up in the NBA under Andre Iguodala. Like, Iguodala taught him a bunch of stuff in Philadelphia. So you're just adding all of these levels to it,
That's
where
right.
all of a sudden you have the strongest, quickest dude that has these very long arms, that has incredible instincts, that has been taught all of the things, the nature, the nurture, this physical talent and skills and attributes, and you all of a sudden just have this dude that is an unbelievable defender. He can go up and down the ladder. He has unbelievable instincts. He's got great hands. Like, there's just so many things that he does well, that all of a sudden you get to a spot where he can just cover anyone. And yeah, during the regular season, they put him on Tatum a lot. And I was curious if they were going to try to do that again in this series, if it'd be Wesley Matthews. And we've seen a mix of both. But yeah, I mean, the Bucks have a lot of confidence that he can cover anyone on that Celtics roster. And it's just kind of, it speaks to how versatile and unbelievable he is as a defender, that that's not crazy. Like, yeah, he can do that.
Before we get you out of here, I do want to get your impression of the Celtics. They've had an insane turnaround this year. They blew through Brooklyn in the first round, and then essentially came into the series as favorites. They got the home court from the way the end of the regular season shook out, and after 2 games, showing to be legitimate on that defensive side of the floor. It's an amazing defensive system that they run when Robert Williams is going at his full level, and they even have the depth behind him to maintain it, as we've seen in this series, because Rob really hasn't been a big factor on that end. Then, of course, you got Jaylen Brown doing what he did to start game 2 alongside Tatum. They're the prolific duo. Does this team have a championship in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think they are if the Bucks are the best team in the East, the Celtics are the second best team in the East, and if the Bucks aren't the best team in the East, then to me, I think it's the Celtics. Like, I just, the way that they defend, the way that they can switch, the physical defenders that they have, the intellectual minds of all those defenders as well. Like, I just think when you're talking about playoff defense, you want to be able to switch, you want to be able to have rim protection. You want to be able to have guys on the perimeter that can defend. The Celtics have all of that. I think, to me, coming into this series and still in this series, I do have some question about their half court offense. I thought, it was going to be interesting to see in this series what happened when they stopped getting 20 free points in transition from the Nets doing whatever the Nets do.
The
Um,
Nets, yeah. I mean, Ime even said it. He threw some shade at them. It was like game 1, I think we had to get used to kind of seeing a team that was defensive minded again.
yeah, no, and that's like exactly what it was, where it's just like, all right, 20 free points because nobody on the Nets decided to get back in transition. So to me, like, that's where the question lies, is, how real was everything that Jason Tatum has done? Because he's made these massive steps forward, at least in my mind, as a playmaker this year. And it's okay, that is true. He's been much better, but when playoff defenses get tough, like when the Milwaukee Bucks come to town, can he still do all of those things? Can he still create in that same way? Can he be the basis of the offense? And I think thus far in this series, we've seen that the Bucks have essentially tried to do everything they can to take away his ability to score. And he's made the passes, he's made the plays. And that, to me, really speaks to just how much he's grown, because I think in the past you could try to bait Jason Tatum into taking long jumpers. You could bait him into trying to play isolation basketball, and that hasn't worked really in this series. The Bucks have tried to take him away as a scorer, and he's made the right pass. He's made the right play. And to me, that's going to be this series, is that half court offense. I know it was spectacular in the final 3 months of the season, but to me, if there is a question about the Celtics, it's that. But even that, it might not matter. The defense just might be good enough, right? Like I watched the Bucks put together the one of the best defensive postseasons in modern history. Let's say the last 20 years last year, and they didn't score that well. It didn't matter that they didn't score that well because they had the best defense. If the Celtics have the best defense, they might just be able to win this thing with that alone and just being fine on offense. So I do think this is a team that is capable of winning a championship and doing so this year, but we'll see because I think this series is going to be a good one.
It's gonna be a battle, and you talked about the back and forth at the beginning. I think that's what we're in for all the way through 7 games. The defense point's key. That's gonna travel to Milwaukee, even if all these role player performances don't, even if all the shooting that they got in game 2 top to bottom doesn't. They're gonna stay in the game just by stringing stops together, and their ability to do that against Durant now, as we've seen,
Yep.
Giannis shut down Jokic during the year, and really that was the formula that's driven them to 33 wins over the last 41 here. So it's consistent. It gives them a floor every night. Even if they're not going to win the game, they're going to be in it because of that defense. And again, the clash of styles in this series, really exciting. Make sure you continue to follow Eric on the Bucks side as we progress into game 3 here. Games every other night once again at theathletic.com. You can sign up and subscribe there today. It's well worth it for the storytelling you get. Appreciate your time today, Eric. And of course, check out our Celtics post-game show here after game 3. We will be in Milwaukee, Josue, Sherrod, and I for that series. And of course, show some love to our sponsor, HelloFresh, HelloFresh.com/playoff16, playoff16, 16 free meals, 3 free gifts. Eric, appreciate you. We will see you in Milwaukee and enjoy the rest of the series and your coverage out there.
I look forward to it. Thanks for having me.